So if we look around, I think it would be fair to say that in many cases, business has found its way into religion, but not enough religion has found its way into business. It was one of the most innovative, pioneering women of the 19th century who coined the phrase, "Religion and business are not two separate things, they are one." And I want to talk to you about the business world of tomorrow. The trends we should be paying attention to, the secret sauce of what will define commerce and capitalism in the remaining years of Earth 1.0 and in the beginning years of Earth 2.0. I think business, the interaction and process of an idea to a product or service, to the exchange of currency for that product or service, because someone sees value in it. I think this whole thing is divine. I grew up with two of the hardest working parents around. My dad would drive around asking people to cut up firewood when I was born just to put food on the table. And as far as I understand it, my parents literally went from rags to riches. I remember asking my mom as a kid, "How can I obtain a full box of baseball cards?" And as I remember it, key phrase there, she told me that I had to work or sell things to make money and then go buy things. Well, so the next day she comes running down the driveway, very distraught and seemingly shocked because I was selling, well, I'd already sold and was continuing to sell some of my toys. I mean, those were old news. I needed these baseball cards. And that was the genesis of beginning to sing the anthem of "Every Day I'm Hustling" for the rest of my life. And we would go to the conventions, the Democratic and Republican conventions. Hard to think about today. And we were the best Democrats at their events, and we were the good old Republicans at theirs. Their money was all green to us, and we had all the political memorabilia you could need to satisfy your desire to show allegiance to your party. Well, then it was the Olympics. And at 13, I'm skating around Atlanta on rollerblades, selling Olympic edition Monopoly games for 2 weeks. I made thousands of dollars. And as a 13-year-old, what do you think I wisely did with all that money? Well, I went and invested it in some custom Big Bertha golf clubs, of course. I could go on and tell you about trading commodities the next summer. I made about $100,000. A few people had loaned me some money, and then I lost it all by the end of the summer. Wasn't paying attention to the soybean futures. I graduated college with the intention to make money, give a little bit of it away, and carry on in my path through life. But everything changed when I went to India, and I saw people with nothing, with such contentment and joy from making the decision to walk away from following millions of gods and then choosing to follow the lowly carpenter of Nazareth. And that was a turning point in my life. For some reason, when I came home, I felt compelled, though, to renounce business as evil, selfish, greedy, and to pursue what I believed at the time, keywords there, what I believed to be ministry. And I began to explore something called self-supporting ministry. But I found that really often meant donor-supported in many cases. And I started to see that for some reason, the world had divorced business from ministry. I began to see ministries that desperately needed business, and I began to see businesses that desperately needed ministry. And I began to ask this question, why is it that business can be so devoid of selflessness, while religion and ministry can so often be filled with selfishness? I began to have this dilemma in my mind, and for so long, many have made a very strong argument that business and religion should remain entirely distinct entities. But if this is the case, I think it's tragic. And as I look at the landscape today, I see way too many ministries and religious organizations that are desperately in need of the innovative, pioneering spirit of business. But I also see businesses with a desperate need for the beauty of pure religion. So let me get practical for a minute, because what I want to do and show you in the next few minutes is why more religious organizations need businessmen and women. And then I want to flip the script. All right, so let's go. Ellen White, one of the most bold and successful entrepreneurs of the 19th century, shared some notes on this idea that I think are vital to hear. These are for anyone affiliated with the business of the church. One of those, she said, those in charge of our conferences should find businessmen to look after the financial details of city work. If such men cannot be found, let facilities be provided for training men to bear these burdens. I want you to think about that. And then there's another one. It describes that the policy which worldly businessmen adopt is not the policy to be chosen and carried out by the men who are connected with our institutions. Selfish policy is not heaven-born. It is earthly. And in this world, the leading maxim is the end justifies the means. And this may be traced in every department of business. And it has a controlling influence in every class of society, in the grand councils of nations, and wherever the Spirit of Christ is not the ruling principle. And then there's one more. It says, brethren, develop your talent in the direction of serving the Lord. Manifest as much tact and ability in working for the upbuilding of the cause of Christ as you do in worldly enterprises. Because the bustle of business, if continuous, will dry up spirituality and leave the soul Christless. Those were very impactful to me. So my appeal to anyone who still has an interest and a passion in the business of religion, please listen to the counsel. Okay, now I want to talk about the meat of the matter, the thing that probably gets me most excited, and this is the religion of business. There are so many elements of religion that I could address that are essential to business. And as we take a look at these, I hope you'll see that these things all interconnect in some way, and I hope I can show you why I'm so passionate about them. So when I think of religion, I think of the government and the organization structure of Zion, the galactic capital of the universe. And I'd argue there is no greater organization to study than that one that has been in existence for eons. And I believe by studying this organization, we learn of how to deal with conflict, how servant leadership works, what motivates, what accountability looks like, and the list goes on and on. And we could talk about the importance of order and record keeping in this organization. We could discuss the beauty of hierarchy and why any organization needs a reporting and an accountability structure as shown by the order and divisions and the responsibilities of the angels in paradise. But the practical lesson I'd like to draw from is the one which is how each of our organizations needs the religion of this utopian society to govern everything we do and to be in every decision we make. I'm personally a fan of distilling things, boiling it down, just distill the idea down almost to the point where, there's trees in a forest. Show me the forest first. We can talk about the trees later. What are we really doing here? Why are we endeavoring into this enterprise? So I've had the privilege to be a part of a number of different business ventures, and in the last few years, I've started to make some notes, and there was one that has started to rise to the top. Well, there's a few, but I'm going to hit on one. So what are these essential elements that you need to be successful? And I began to lay all these out, but there was a few that I realized, if you distill them down, there's a mantra I've started to go by called the Rhodium Rule, where we don't just practice the golden rule that Jesus speaks of in Matthew 7:12, where he says, whatever it is you'd want someone to do for you, do for them. And he basically says, upon this, all the law hangs. So I thought, well, how do you prevent that from sliding into selfishness? And I thought it's this. Ask yourself in a situation, whatever it is you'd want someone to do for you, do more for them. And just like rhodium is more precious than gold, if we get this mantra out there, this is the way I describe it. Kindness is king, candor is queen, and experience is everything. So how do we create experiences where when people interact with our product or service, where they go tell their friends how remarkable this experience was. I think it starts with being kind, and it's followed up with being candid. And that these two principles, I think, are the most beautiful guardrails to creating an amazing culture in your organization. Being kind always, but don't be kind while sacrificing principle and truth and honesty and transparency. But be candid, straightforward, open, forthright, but not to the point of ever not being kind. You know, I got these ideas from one of my favorite books called Education. And in it, the author describes how in paradise, there was one law, not 10. One law that governed all of the guardian race. And it's in Romans 14:7. None liveth to himself. But then it goes on to describe it like this. The law that none liveth to himself, Lucifer was determined to oppose. He desired to live for self. He sought to make himself a center of influence. And it was this that incited rebellion in heaven. And it was man's acceptance of this principle that brought sin onto the earth. And let me just say, someone in an organization or in a home or in a marriage, when they decide to live for self, that self is supreme, this is one giant step to disaster. And then the author continues in speaking about learning from the source of wisdom in Scripture, that the student of Scripture should learn to view the Word as a whole and to see the relation of its parts. And then he or she should understand the nature of the two principles that are contending for supremacy and should learn to trace their working through the records of history and prophecy to the great consummation. That we should see how this controversy enters into every phase of human experience and how in every act of life you and I reveal one or the other of these two antagonistic motives, and how whether we will or not, we're deciding upon which side of the controversy we will be found. And these two principles I'm going to share with you are life and death in your startup and in your organization, in your venture, in your marriage, and in your friendships. And when you see them, I hope you have the aha moment like I did, where sometimes we can be so religiously minded that we're no earthly good. These are practical principles everybody can understand. All right, the first one, unselfishness. The principle of the kingdom of heaven. This is the principle that Lucifer hates, and the very existence of this idea he denies. And then there's the other one, that from the beginning of the great controversy, Lucifer has endeavored to prove God's principles of action to be selfish. And this is the way he tries to get into our lives. Make us feel like we're selfish, maybe when we're not. But to disprove these claims is the work of Jesus and of those of us who bear his name. And it was to give in his own life an example of unselfishness that Jesus came in the form of humanity. And every one of us that understand this have the opportunity to demonstrate it in our practical lives. So, all right, let me translate this idea. If you want to be successful in business today, you need an edge. You need something that sets you apart from your competition. And what is it that 99% of the time that is? It's usually customer service and the customer experience. And this isn't random, it's intentional. Because the only way your customers or parishioners or whoever else you believe you have the best product and to show to them is if your employees, your actual team in-house, they have to have experienced the product and they have to have a testimony themselves. And it's your job as a leader to demonstrate this principle of unselfishness to your team so that they in turn demonstrate it throughout the organization, and eventually it gets translated to customers and from the customers into all the world. And you know, it's this idea of service, talking about bringing more religion into business. There's a quote that says, in his providence, God places before human beings service that will be as medicine to their diseased minds, and that will lead them to put aside the selfish preference, which if we cherished would disqualify us for what God has in store for us in our lives. Because this idea of service to each other, and in our organization, our family, our team, it results in this contagion where we want to show others that same unselfish spirit, and then they will want to do it to others. In this world of give, 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 that would never end, as opposed to the world we now live in, which is take, 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 which is on the verge of extinction. And if you were to look at most issues within a company's culture, I think they would probably all fall under the heading of selfishness: stealing money, having an affair, dishonest time clock, false reporting, and the list goes on. And it's Ellen White again describing this idea. She says, another book was opened, talking about in heaven, where all the sins of those who profess truth were listed, and under the general heading of selfishness is listed every other sin. You know, you look at so many companies who put themselves, their profits, their wallets first, and one by one they are starting to fall off the scene. So if you want to be on the cutting edge of success in the world of business today and into the future, you got to find a way to make this idea translate into every moment of delight for your customer, where they feel like you're going above and beyond every single step of the way. And it starts with when your employees feel like you are going above and beyond every step of the way for them, that you are practicing what you preach. And yeah, this is a little easier said than done. But here's 2 quick ideas on why showing this type of leadership to others is so important. First to our team, and from the team to the rest of the world. There's a quote that says, "A kind and courteous Christian is the most powerful argument in favor of the gospel that can be produced." I'd say it's the most powerful favor and argument in the world of business too. And then there's another one though, kind of gives the flip side of this. It says, "One may profess faith in the truth, but if it does not make you sincere, kind, patient, forbearing, heavenly minded, then it's a curse to its possessors, and through their influence it will be a curse to the world." So you can talk about religion all day long, but if it doesn't translate into your business, into your team, into your coworkers, it's worthless. If your faith, your spirituality, your religion doesn't make its way into every business transaction, contract, interaction, it is a curse to you, and it's a curse to everyone that comes in contact with your business. And I think this is the gospel story. If you think about the leader of the organization had executives questioning his motives, his character. So the only way he could show that he was unselfish, he had to step down to the lowliest position, renouncing all his authority, his power, his rank, his position, his title, and he became one of us. And he held nothing back, and he risked all, and he counted the cost, and he felt heaven was not a place to be desired if you and I weren't there. And he has regained his position, and he's even more exalted than ever before. And he's one of us. And it's his organization that ultimately we find ourselves a part of. It's his unselfishness, his kindness, his humility, his graciousness, his courage, his risk-taking nature that we have to emulate on a daily basis. I think of that statement that Jesus did not count heaven a place to be desired while you and I were lost. My question is, do you lead like that? Do you love like that? Do you serve your team and your customers like that, where their joy, their satisfaction, their peace is prized more than your own? I believe today we sit on the verge of moments unlike the world has ever seen. Many of us are asking, what do we do with the talents the Lord has given us? What do we do with these desires to work, to be ambitious, to dream in a world where it seems like we hear a flock of black swans flying at us? And I think of the quote that the desire to accumulate wealth is an original affection of our nature, implanted there by our Heavenly Father for noble ends. So if that's the case, I want to challenge you, and anyone listening this morning, dream bigger. Write your vision down, dream more, make it plain, but do it with one thought in mind. We cannot take our wealth with us. Well, or can we? I want to speak to those of you who are really ambitious. Listen to these words from the great controversy about Earth 2.0, and it says this: "There, the grandest enterprises may be carried forward, the loftiest aspirations reached, the highest ambitions realized, and still there will arise new heights to surmount, new wonders to admire, new truths to comprehend, fresh objects to call forth the powers of mind and soul and body." And an enterprise, by definition, is a project or undertaking, typically one that is difficult or requires effort. So chew on that the future is for the ambitious. And while you're chewing, though, consider how you can get a head start on building your team in the here and now. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20, he says, "Don't store up your treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal." In your business, keep your priorities in order, loving God and loving your fellow man. And if you and I do that, we will be successful in this life and in the life to come. And I'm going to end with a quote, and it says it like this: "You have felt that business is business, religion is religion, but I tell you that these cannot be divorced. If you seek God with the whole heart, He will be found of you." But then Jesus' words say, "Without me you can do nothing." And then this: "You are not to put asunder that which God has joined, business and religion." Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd share it. We release a new episode every week, so subscribe or follow. And to help us get the word out even faster, you can give via the link below. See you next time.